Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so today we're going to map out exactly how we, as consumers, make choices. Think about it. We all face the exact same fundamental challenge every day. We're constantly trying to balance our infinite, totally boundless desires against our finite, very real world budgets. But how do we actually decide what to buy? Let's kick things off with a seemingly simple question that actually stumped early economists for years. Can we attach a strict numerical value to human happiness? Like, imagine eating a fresh slice of pizza. Can you honestly say it gave you exactly 15 units of joy? To get to the bottom of this, we're going to follow a pretty neat roadmap. We'll start by uncovering the flaws of old utility theories. Then we'll map out our preferences and learn the rules of that map. After that, we'll hit the reality check, the budget line, before tracking dynamic changes in the market, and finally, splitting the price effects. All right, part one, the flaws of utility analysis. Let's look at why economists like Hicks and Allen had to totally overhaul the old Marshallian utility approach. So, the core issue? Marshallian theory relied on some wildly unrealistic assumptions. It literally pretended we could measure utility in absolute cardinal numbers. Which is crazy because that leads to impossible tasks, like trying to prove if person A gets more mathematical joy from an apple than person B. It also assumed money's utility never changes. Even crazier, it completely failed to explain Giffen's paradox. This was a real historical anomaly where incredibly poor workers in England actually bought more bread when its price went up, simply because they couldn't afford meat anymore and had to survive on the absolute basics. Clearly, a better theory was needed. Moving right into part two, mapping preferences. How did economists fix this mess? Well, they completely ditched rigid numbers for something much more naturally human, relative choices. This brings us to what's called a scale of preferences. Instead of agonizing over exactly how much satisfaction you're getting, this approach simply asks you to rank different combinations that give you the same overall vibe or satisfaction. You're just building a hierarchy of your desires, and for the moment, we're completely ignoring how much things actually cost. Take a look at this indifference schedule. It brilliantly illustrates the concept. Notice the trade-offs in those columns. To go from having 2 bananas to 3, the consumer is perfectly willing to give up 14 whole oranges just to keep your total satisfaction exactly the same. But look further down the list. To go from 5 bananas to 6, they only give up 4 oranges. This is the diminishing marginal rate of substitution in action. Basically, the more bananas you have, the less you value an extra one, and the more you desperately want to hold on to your precious oranges. Okay, part 3, let's lay down the rules of the map, the indifference curves. If we take that fascinating banana and orange data and actually plot it on a graph, we get an indifference curve. Think of this just like a topographical map, but of a consumer's mind. Everywhere on that specific curve represents the exact same level of happiness. Now, this map has some very strict rules governing it. First, these curves always slope downwards to the right, because hey, if you want more of one good, you have to give up some of the other to stay at the same happiness level. Second, they're convex to the origin, meaning they bow inward. Because of that diminishing marginal utility we just talked about, your trade-offs naturally taper off. And fourth, we assume the line is continuous, meaning goods can be perfectly divided. But rule number 3 is literally my favorite, because it prevents a total mathematical paradox. Notice point P right there where the red X is. If 2 curves actually crossed, it would imply that a single point yields 2 entirely different levels of total satisfaction at the exact same time. That breaks our entire baseline assumption of consistent rational behavior. It's a massive logical fallacy. Think of it just like climbing a mountain on a real topographical map. Stepping up to a higher curve, moving further away from the origin in an indifference map means you've reached a higher elevation of total satisfaction. And obviously, you always want to climb higher. Which brings us to part 4. The budget line. We've mapped out all these infinite desires perfectly. But, well, reality sets in eventually, right? Our consumer only has so much money in their pocket. Enter the budget price line. This represents the cold, hard boundary of your purchasing power. If you blow all your cash on bananas, you're stuck at one end of the line. All on oranges, you're at the other. The slope of this line is precisely equal to the ratio of the prices of the 2 commodities. It's strictly what the market allows you to do. So, the ultimate goal of our entire consumer journey is equilibrium. On this graph, that's point P. It is this beautiful mathematical moment where the highest possible satisfaction curve just barely grazes the absolute limit of their budget line. It's the absolute peak of the mountain, they can actually afford to climb. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is what happens at this exact tangency point. Right at this spot, the rate at which you are willing to trade oranges for bananas perfectly matches the rate the market forces you to trade them. It's a perfect, fleeting harmony between human desire and financial reality. All right, on to part 5, dynamic changes. The world isn't static, right? So let's see how this model holds up when we throw in some real-world curveballs. What happens when your boss gives you a raise or a store drops its prices? First up, let's talk about income. Say you get a raise. Your budget line shifts outward in parallel. You can suddenly afford more of everything. When we connect all those new, happier equilibrium points across your indifference map, we create the income consumption curve. It traces your exact journey as you get wealthier. But check out this plot twist. What if the good is what economists call inferior? Think of like really cheap instant noodles. The surprising fact here is that getting a raise means your income consumption curve actually bends backwards. Because you're richer, you completely abandon the instant noodles for better food, meaning higher income actually leads to less demand for that specific good. On the flip side, what if your income stays exactly the same, but the price of just one good drops? While the budget line doesn't shift in parallel, it acts like a hinge. It tilts outward along the axis of the cheaper good, allowing you to buy way more of it. If we track those shifting equilibrium points, we map out the price consumption curve. And the super cool part? From this curve, we can actually derive a standard everyday demand curve. Okay, we've made it to part 6, splitting the effects. We're going to dive into the most complex, but honestly, the most rewarding part of this whole explainer, dissecting what actually happens inside your brain when a price drops. Because it's not just one effect, it's 2. When a price falls, you end up buying more of that thing for 2 entirely distinct reasons. First is the substitution effect. The good is now relatively cheaper compared to other things, so you naturally substitute towards it. Second is the income effect. Because the good is cheaper, it's as if you've magically been handed a little bit of extra money. Your virtual purchasing power increased, so naturally you buy more. Economists came up with a genuinely genius way to split this total price effect into its 2 parts. They draw this hypothetical compensatory budget price line. It's like, imagine we drop the price of a good, but at the exact same time, we snatch away just enough of your income so you are forced back down to your original satisfaction curve. This brilliant mathematical trick entirely isolates the substitution effect. Whatever change in demand is left over after we give that virtual income back, that's your income effect. So, what's the big takeaway here? Why go through the trouble of drawing all these intricate curves? Because it gives us a highly realistic, visual engine to predict human behavior. It proves once and for all that we don't need to measure happiness exactly to understand how people maximize it. We just need to understand their practical trade-offs under strict financial constraints. But I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative thought from the source material. We've just seen how to beautifully map a single individual's mind. But indifference curves cannot simply be added together across different people. So, if we can't just combine them, is a truly perfect economic map of an entire society's preferences actually impossible? Definitely something to think about next time you make a purchase. Thanks for exploring this fascinating topic with me.